Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/maliciouscompliance, where people conform to the letter but not the spirit of a request. If you're new around here, please do hit subscribe down below so that you never miss out on another video. But for now, let's sit back, relax, and enjoy some malicious compliance. Tell me to call someone who cares. Don't mind if I do. I was at 1.1 of Best Buy's elite members, having spent thousands there in a short period of time. I made one major return there and didn't think much of it. They didn't say anything other than that they were sorry for selling me a defective TV. Fast forward 6 months. I picked up a new 4K monitor that had a pretty obvious defect immediately. Took it back the next day, and they said they could not honour any further returns from me. Upon further prodding, I was told that they use a third party to track returns, and that I had gone over some preset dollar amount returning that TV, and they could not and would not budge, even after the guy at the Geek Squad had in fact confirmed the monitor was bad. I escalate to a manager, and it goes like this. Who can I talk to about getting this return done? No one. That's absurd. It's clearly defective and I bought it yesterday. Can I exchange it at least? Nope, nothing you can do. This seems pretty anti-consumer. What's the next step here? You could try calling someone who cares. I think I'll do that. I took my phone out and called Amex on speaker, since I paid for the monitor with it, explained to the rep what was going on, and that the general manager of the store could hear the conversation if they had any questions for him. The general manager confirms his position, and Amex's response was an immediate $500 plus tax chargeback to Best Buy. The general manager's face went completely red with anger, and he went full rage mode yelling at me that I needed to leave and not come back. I just politely smiled and told him I only did exactly what he asked me to do. P.S. That third-party company is Retail Equation, and there are multiple class action lawsuits against them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's really illegal to not return something if it's defective, especially if they've got the receipt and everything. No parking without a permit? Got it. I live in a suburban street that is narrow and has limited parking, so parking is restricted to residents. Each household gets one parking permit that you need to display in your car if you want to park on the street. My boyfriend doesn't live with me and doesn't have a parking permit, so he parks in a nearby parking lot. It's not a big deal since it's just 1 to 2 minutes away by foot. A couple of weeks ago, my boyfriend is staying over for the weekend and we go grocery shopping. On our return, he decides to stop in front of my house so we wouldn't have to carry our bags from the parking lot. The car was parked there for 5 minutes max while unloading the groceries, and there were plenty of empty spots at that time of the day. As my boyfriend is getting back into the car, my old next door neighbour walks up to him and tells him in a very accusatory tone that non-residents can't park there. We try to explain that we were only dropping off our groceries and will be moving the car now, but old neighbour is being very rude to us and accusing us of blocking the traffic and stealing spots from the residents, and other nonsense. He ends up threatening to call the cops if we dare park in the street again without a permit. This neighbour has a reputation for being a royal pain, and it's not the first time he's complained to me about trivial things. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. I don't have a car, therefore I have a parking permit that's been sitting unused ever since I moved in. I asked a friend whose husband is a cop and found out that any car can use my parking permit. It doesn't have to be registered under my name. Basically, if you have a house on this street, you're allowed to park one car on this street. I did what any petty human would do and gave my permit to my boyfriend. He now parks in front of my house anytime he comes over, and old man neighbor is livid about it, but can't do anything because the car has a permit. Wait, so why is this old guy mad that her boyfriend is parking in front of her house? Like, it's not like he's parking in front of this old guy's house, he's parking in front of someone else's, what? Don't want me to help you learn your scales? Alright. This happened a bit over a year ago, but reading posts on this sub reminded me of it and made me want to share my story. In senior year of high school, I was the unofficial percussion section leader in our school's wind ensemble. I say unofficial because I only played mallet instruments, the vibraphone, marimba, glockenspiel, etc. I had the most musical experience in the group. For reference, I'm currently taking a bachelor's in music at university, whereas the other 3 students were mostly taking the class for arts credits. That's the most bragging I'll do from here on out, I swear. Every semester, our band director had us do scale tests where we would memorize all 12 major scales by memory, and he'd randomly select 2 for us to play. Since I was on mallets, band director had me teach the rest of the section the scales. Now, if you've ever played percussion in a large ensemble, especially a high school one, you know that you can get ignored a lot. The band director, an amazing man mind you, focused on teaching all the wind players, we had no strings, rip, who could read notes how to play the scales. He trusted me to show the drummers every note on the keyboards, because they could read rhythms but not so much on pitches, so that they would be able to pass the tests. Every day I would patiently show 3 of them how to play the scale of the week, and for the most part it paid off. The most experienced guy could somewhat read notes and he practiced really hard to memorize the scales, which he had learned the previous year but forgotten. Understandable, have a nice day. The other 2, a boy and a girl, were newer and they were a bit slower, but they still made an effort to learn the 8, 7 if you want to get technical, notes each week. The girl was difficult. Whenever I'd offer her advice or correct her on the notes, she'd dismiss me and say something along the lines of, "I got this," while still screwing up and making the same mistake. I'm no teacher, but I felt like I was doing my best to be gentle, coming by when I saw her struggling and backing off when I got the signal to do so. One day during scales practice, I'm going around and checking up on our group, since I know the scales already, duh, when I approached new girl to try and help. To her credit, I might have said something a little nitpicky, like that the notes should be equal rhythmic length, but that didn't excuse what followed. She looked up from the keys and said in the most bratty voice, "You know what, OP, why don't you just leave me alone and worry about yourself?" Okay. From then on, I heeded her request. Every morning thereafter, I would only help the 2 guys with their scales. When we would get a new scale, I would only show these 2 what notes they would need to learn, and let Miss Screw-Off look them up herself. Band director barely paid mind to our section during scale practice, so he didn't notice her struggling. She must have had enough false confidence, or didn't care, because to my knowledge she never reached out to anyone for help. When scale tests came, band director had us all go one at a time. I had no troubles because this is like my second language. Veteran guy plays the scales nearly perfectly. Having practiced so hard, I was really proud of him. Newer guy made a few mistakes, but did well enough to pass. You did good, buddy. Ice Queen walks over to the marimba, and the girl will not look up from the keys to meet the band director's eyes. He picks the scale for her to play. She takes a full 9 seconds, I counted, to find the starting note and proceeds to play the most creative interpretation of a single octave E major scale I've ever heard. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I'm pretty sure it was the one with a couple sharps. It was almost like she was trying to write a 12-tone row on the spot. Band director gives an uncomfortable smile and picks the next scale. Repeat a similar modal mess to the first one. Needless to say, the band director failed her. Did I forget to mention that the scale test was worth 50% of our grade? Well, I don't know much about music, but I do know that she probably left that class on a bad note. ID required. So this is about my father. He worked at a high school that required IDs for the students and the teachers alike. Pretty common for public schools, and equally common are the petty teachers that enforce that rule like it's the only thing keeping the school together. My dad doesn't care. He tells his class as much. If you're in class, you're fine. Don't worry about it with me. Other teachers in his department did not like my dad's attitude towards IDs. It wasn't taking class time, and he wasn't writing students up, so his class's behavior seemed better, and he was getting through the material the smallest bit faster. It's also not nepotistic for me to say he was one of the maybe 3 good teachers in the department, and got the highest standardized test scores on average. The only people who took his class and failed his area on it, which is history, were kids who seemingly tanked the tests on purpose. So the petty teachers who didn't like him were out to get him. The next year rolls around, and it's been announced that everyone needs to be enforcing the rules about the IDs harder. So my dad has to write people up for it. He hasn't been caring before, so he hardly notices when the kids don't have them. And his deal to the kids was, if he forgot it, he wouldn't write them up. One day, he left it in his car and walked past the petty teachers who noticed, and didn't say anything to him. They went and knocked to the principal, who had hired my dad and was his friend. Instead of the AP they were supposed to take it up with. She told him to make sure to wear his ID, and told them to only come to her if there was something that would distract them from teaching. He said that would be fine, went home and got to work. This was his 5th year at the school, and each year they issue a new ID. He had 2 that were on those extendable leads with the belt clip, and 3 on lanyards. He also scanned one, and had it printed on an iron-on sheet. Then, he ironed it onto one of those shirts from the 5-packs at Walmart. And the next day, wore one of the blank shirts, his new iron-on over that, both of his clip-on IDs, and his 3 lanyards. Lo and behold, the teachers who'd narked on him were waiting by the door, and as per his description, red-faced at what he did. He smiled and waved as he went past, and made a beeline for his room without running. Then, took off his sport coat, the IDs and ID shirt, and put the sport coat back on over the other blank shirt. He stuffed 4 of the 5 IDs and the shirt into an empty drawer in his desk, and waited for the students to start coming in. A few minutes later, the principal comes in with the main narc, and he's just sitting there completely normal, one ID clipped to his belt, and he stands to shake the principal's hand. She says good morning, glares at the other teacher, and the narc walks away. When they're out of earshot, she just says, "Let me see the shirt." They have a laugh and nobody bothered him about his ID again. For true just desserts, that teacher later got into a screaming match with my dad where they did all the screaming. The cameras caught it all, including the 3 times my dad tried to walk away before being stopped, and the teacher was no longer working there by the end of the semester. I don't know what it is, but I've got a little hunch that they were a bit jealous of their father's popularity, and he was probably liked a lot more than they were. Want to go through insurance? Sure thing. Like most of these, this story happens many years back, I was a high school sophomore at the time. The bell rings to let us all out, and being a sophomore, I was able to drive to and from school. I rushed to my car so my friends and I could go to a local concert. We are pulling out of the parking lot fairly quickly when I stop to wait by the main road for someone to let me out. As soon as I come to a dead stop, one of my lovely classmates backs directly into my truck and immediately gets out of her car angry. Like most stupid 16-year-olds in a hurry, I was thinking how to get out there quickly. So we exchanged insurance info, and I didn't tell my parents until returning that night. The next morning, my dad calls her dad since they know each other, and politely asks if it's okay if he goes through a well-known mechanic friend in the area to appraise damages to my car, insurance-free. No issues with anyone's premiums rising. No brainer, right? Wrong. Her dad refuses and tells my dad about how his girl said she did nothing wrong, and I was flying through the parking lot and she didn't have time to see me. My dad is getting pretty frustrated since it's clearly his daughter's fault, but the man doesn't budge. He yells at my dad to let insurance sort it out so we can pay for their damages. Cue malicious compliance. My dad simply says sure thing. The next day, I get a call from the insurance agency, wanting to know the exact story. I gladly gave every detail, and within a week, their insurance was paying for all my damages, and her premiums went up, I'm sure. P.S. She hit another classmate 2 weeks later, doing the same thing. Gotta love idiots. How easy is it to pass your driving test in America? Like, I see like people pass it at 16 and I don't know, it seems really easy over there.
Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching and I will see you very soon.